Coming up this week, should potential Canadian immigrants be screened for anti-Canadian values? Also, what should be the priority in Canada-China relations? This and much more to come. Hitting the streets, this is Outburst. Hello and welcome to Outburst. I'm Glenn McGuinness. Conservative MP Kelly Leach, who's also a contender in her party's leadership race to replace Stephen Harper, has put forth an idea of screening new-coming Canadians for their views on intolerance of other cultures, religions, sexual orientations, and reluctance to embrace Canadian freedoms. Some of her fellow Conservatives and leadership rivals have spoken out against the screening, but Leach says this is all about a united Canadian identity. So what do you think? Our question: should potential Canadian immigrants be screened for anti-Canadian values?
Yes.
And any suggestions on how they would go about that?
No, I just think that people need to be very clear on their intention of wanting to live here, and that we understand their intention of wanting to live here, and that they're coming here for the right reasons.
Absolutely not. That in and of itself is anti-Canadian. We are a company that believes in multiculturalism, and we don't judge people based on what they believe. As long as they're, human beings, then it doesn't really matter. Like, the whole point of Canada is that we're so diverse, and that's what makes us such a great country.
I think that there is a lot of fear going on with ISIS and terrorism, and people think that what is different is wrong, and what is different is scary, and what is different is terrorism, and that's not what it is. So when you say anti-Canadian, are you meaning that they dress different, or are they speaking a different language, or what? There's people in Canada that I think don't have Canadian values, people who aren't inclusive of the LGBT community, or who aren't inclusive when it comes to Aboriginal rights, and are racist even then. So when you say anti-Canadian values, I think that that's a really loaded question. And we want good people coming into our country, of course, but I think that that's a very difficult question.
I don't think we do any good. I really don't. I think there's other methods of screening that certainly they're not going to get a truthful response one way or another, however they screen them. Not in any way I'm familiar with.
Possibly. That's a really tough one. I feel like our immigration system could definitely be doing better. I have a couple friends who are having issues staying in Canada, and they have kids here and partners and all kinds of things. And the way that the point system that they're using right now really is hurting the people who are trying to stay here.
No, everybody comes here because they want a better life. Whether their values are different when they come here, no. We all have the right to have a better life and a better way of living. You look at the Aboriginal people; they gave up their life, their land for that, because the Europeans came here and took that away. So I think now it's fair that everybody gets a chance at a better life.
I was reading today about Leach saying, I'm being mischaracterized, and comparing you to Trump is really unfair. I gotta say, she put her foot in her mouth. It was just like when she came out with the barbaric practices thing. These are two big times in a row where you're being mischaracterized. I think you're just on the wrong side of the issue. And I think you're appealing to a social conservative base in the party that really isn't going to do you any favors.
I do believe so, yeah. I think that as a individual that was out of this, was born in Poland, came to Canada. I'm a Canadian citizen of many years. I think that it's very important in the country that you're living to know the values that you're living with and respect and all that stuff. So I think that the screening is very important for sure.
Absolutely not. We have fine regulations about who comes in and at what level of citizenship or landed immigrant status, et cetera, et cetera. No, that plays right into the Donald Trumpisms of the day. I don't like that at all.
Well, not really. I don't really think. We're going to get people that shouldn't be here no matter what they do. There's bad Canadians also that were born in this country. So, no, I don't really think that that should be the way.
I think they should be, yeah. If they're going to be here, I mean, want to accommodate immigrants, because that's what our country is made out of. But by the same token, there are Canadian values, there are Canadian systems that they should be respectful of.
I think they should definitely be screened. I don't think anyone should be coming into this country and trying to change our lifestyle and making our lifestyle the way it was in their own countries. I want to know that their values are the same as our values.
It depends. If it's a poor family that is struggling and they're trying to make a life better and they're in a civil war or whatnot, I'd say probably not. But in this day and age, I don't know, it's hard to say. It could be beneficial for Canadians if they're screened, but on the other hand, I've got mixed feelings about that.
That's very upsetting. What are Canadian values? Maybe we should all be screened for anti-Canadian. Is an anti-Canadian value something that's contradicting to their policies? I think their own party have already got their back up. They're looking at themselves, sort of shooting themselves in the foot in that case, and that's her expression isn't a Canadian value. I mean, we're set up for people to exercise a right, and to ask someone who's coming to accept our values when we don't even accept as a group, it's left field or right field, or it's out of the park some way or other. I'm not much of a sports fan, so I'm going to mix my metaphors right there.
Again, double-edged sword to do that. I think if it's an adult, 18 or over, there should be some screening processes done. I do believe in that. Kids and that sort of thing, how are you going to know? So I think common sense should dictate what we do. And if there is a background of terrorism, whatever the case may be, well then maybe no, but at the same time too, we got to keep a mind open and eyes open on what's going on the world stage. So anyway, I would just say partially yes.
The legal age to vote in Canada was changed to 18. In which year? 1965, 1970, or 1975?
1975.
Okay, 1975.
65. 1965.
75.
I want to go 1970. Is it 1970?
Yes, it is, sir.
Oh, wow. Look at me go.
Very good.
Right. Not bad.
Before 1970, the minimum voting age in Canada was 21. Many party leaders have resonated with Canadians both as Prime Minister and in opposition, and their charisma alone has made them quite successful. So, in terms of attributes that may get your attention, what's on your list? Our question: what qualities do you look for in a political leader?
In a political leader, I look for honesty. I want someone that'll sit down and talk with different groups. I don't want someone who's just looking out for their own means and wanting to stay there a couple of years so they can get a big pension. When someone goes in there as a nice guy who's interested in his constituents, I hate it when I see 2 years later he's not a nice guy and he couldn't care less and you can't get an appointment with him.
Honesty. That's my, just be honest. Tell us the truth. Don't try to whitewash it or what have you. So I think honesty is my big priority.
Somebody who'll speak to people and represent them, and a positive attitude. Most of all, maybe right now, positive attitude. And I think we're doing very well locally and nationally.
How about you?
I would agree. I think somebody who's very positive and who really listens and wants to try to represent everybody wisely, but I think someone who's really canny, really smart, and also listens to people who have been in the trenches. Someone who's really willing to take advice, good advice.
When you get into a political leader, I hate to say it, but it's big business, and really, it's not necessarily what the person on the street sees as a political leader, because it's a person of Good personality. I mean, like Trudeau is a wonderful personality. What he is as an actual leader, I couldn't even form an opinion on. But at the end of the day, it's big money that gets people there, and call it any way you want to call it, but they're the ones that run it.
Honesty, although that's kind of rare in a political leader. Somebody who could think on their feet, who knows what they're doing, and integrity, I guess. There's so many political leaders around the world that are bought off or just don't have any kind of integrity, and that representing the people, representing what the people want, giving the people a voice, that's what's important.
I guess receptive to the community. Everyone has their voice to that and kind of listens to the community, and is a true leader for the people and speaks, on the whole. So, I would say that maybe. So,
honesty, being forthright, truthful, committed to the everyday person.
Charismatic, really being able to talk to the people and knowing what's going on in their ridings, knowing what their demographic is, really being able to approach them, knowing what people need, not just focusing on one specific group, but really paying attention to the entire spectrum of the people around them.
I think a leader should have a good history and a good set of values, and be able to deliver on promises. And I think that not just an individual that can look good in front of camera, but actually be able to deliver on promises that Canadians actually are requiring. So,
that's a good question. I would say, is it the kind of person I like to go have a beer with? I don't think that's necessarily the most important thing. I don't agree much at all with who Stephen Harper was, but he was a good leader, although his personal traits or anything like that weren't things that I particularly agree with. I don't think you need to be as warm and fuzzy as Trudeau is, although I think it works for him in contrast. Mulcair was a very good, strong leader. I think it was a shame that he sabotaged his own the election last go, but you've got to represent Canadians. I think you have to speak French for sure. You have to have a solid, centrist view of social issues. I would say those are pretty broad.
The black-capped chickadee is the official bird of which province? New Brunswick, Saskatchewan, or British Columbia?
Saskatchewan.
Saskatchewan? I have no idea. I'm wrong again, aren't I?
You're not giving anything away. Saskatchewan.
British Columbia.
I don't, I will randomly choose New Brunswick.
I was going to go with New Brunswick, too.
We're both wrong, yes.
What is it?
You're both right.
Oh.
Okay.
The black-capped chickadee was proclaimed as the official bird of New Brunswick in August 1983. It is currently in the running with several other species to be chosen as Canada's national bird by the Royal Canadian Geographic Society. During his recent trip to China, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau looked to strengthen Canada-China relations, especially in the area of trade and investment. For many, this trip was of great importance, given China's economic clout worldwide. But there are still some who would like to see the topic of human rights discussed. So once again, we take the topic to you. Our question: what should be the priority in Canada-China relations?
Wow, that's a really interesting question. I don't know. I think some of the key issues that would be great to see addressed would be things like climate change. I know that Prime Minister Trudeau has been very vocal on the subject of that, and it'd be great to see with China's development some level of the extension of the Tokyo Agreement, something along those lines. I know that for the most part, people like to talk about economic ties, and trade. No, I've been really impressed with the stance on some of the the more ecological side of things?
Well, certainly human rights would be a main issue, and first issue, I think Canada really needs to reestablish a really good trading relationship with them. I'm not sure as the status of the one they have, but I think a few years ago it wasn't very good. So reestablishing that relationship would be great. And I think there's a lot of concern here about the products that come from China. Everything comes from China. So there's a lot of concern about are we going to be producing anything ourselves in the future. So I think the public just needs to be more informed about how much of our products do come from China and what the quality is as well, especially food.
Well, I would think that the priority has to be a business approach that's balanced with other considerations. Certainly, China's got something like 400 million middle-class citizens. That's a big market, and you can't afford to ignore that. On the other hand, you don't want to sell your soul to that either, you know. So it has to be a balance between the two. And quite frankly, I'm fairly confident at this point that he can probably manage that somehow.
Well, I think free trade's a good thing. We just need to manage it correctly and make sure that we're not subject to currency manipulations. And at the end of the day, we have to, protect our interests as well.
Oh, I think the business relationship probably is the priority. Behind that would, I guess, be human rights, but that's a bit of a tall order to expect to be able to do business and worry about human rights at the same time.
Well, trading first. Of course, he has to say something about the human rights, but not push it too much, otherwise he's going to lose it. You know, we are a small country and they are a big country, so we can only say so much.
Well, you want to see something like human rights in China, but that's not going to do any good because everybody's trying it. I suppose good trade, that's the only thing I can say, although I really mean human rights.
The first thing that comes to my mind is strong and open communication. We're not that old of a country compared to somebody that's, a few thousand years old who've been around the block several times and they know how to make things work, and we're still new. So I want to make sure that, I don't know, I guess I'm being a little bit rough with saying this, but I want to make sure that we're not getting the short end of the stick because we're so young.
In terms of political relations, I think we should get on their good side again because they're a fast and growing industry, and I think maybe we should be looking into amending the relationship with China and Canada. Economically, I don't think we should be stepping our foot in that pool, but I know everything are intertwined together, so it kind of might be impossible. Yeah, because I think there's a lot of people here that need jobs first before we start outsourcing to other countries that might be cheaper.
That I'm not too sure about. I know that there's a big thing right now, and I've seen a little bit between Trudeau and whoever the leader is over there. And Trudeau's trying to say, China should be doing this and China should be doing that. But they have their set of priorities. They have their set of, goals that they're trying to attain. And another nation should not be pressuring and bullying, a major player in the world market to say, this is what you should be doing. They have their set of goals and their targets. And if it can fit into the great structure of the puzzle, great. If not, so be it.
I think a lot of the trade issues would be very important since we do get everything from China anyways now. If you ever look around, you look at tags, everything's either from Taiwan or China. And so as far as trade, I think we do awesome trade, but Trudeau says he was just down there and he says he's got some more trade agreements and that it just defeats what I was going to say, Canadian workers, because we can't compete with the Chinese wage and buying their products. We really take away from Canada to a certain point, right?
Free trade.
Why?
Because free trade, all free trade is good trade. And if they're free with their trade to us, we should be free with their trade with our trade to them. And the important thing is, if China wants to subsidize us getting high-quality goods at low prices, we should let them.
From what I've heard in terms of like energy politics and energy justice is that China's kind of leading the way when it comes to green technology, but they're also the largest emitters of carbon in the world. They still use a lot of coal-fired power plants and stuff like that, but like I said, they're leading in renewables and stuff like that. So I think there's a lot of opportunity in terms of the environment for learning about technologies that are coming out of China, and just the scale of the work that they're doing in terms of that is I think something that Canada can learn from in terms of transitioning out of fossil fuels.
The Energy East pipeline has been touted as a huge potential boost to the Canadian economy. The pipeline would ship up to 1.1 million barrels of crude from oil fields in Alberta and Saskatchewan to refineries in Quebec and New Brunswick. Out in Alberta and on the East Coast, it's not hard to see the pipeline's value. It's just some municipalities in between that are not singing its praises. Current Montreal Mayor and former federal Liberal Cabinet Minister Denis Coderre says the economic value of this pipeline would pale in comparison to a potential cleanup in case of a disaster. So he's looking for veto power to keep it out of his area. So we took the topic to you. Our question: should municipal governments have the ability to veto national energy pipelines?
No.
Why not?
Because it's a national issue. And I'm sure Alberta wouldn't want to veto it. Maybe someone in Newfoundland would, but I don't know. I'm not great for pipelines, but I don't think someone in, I don't know, some tiny place in Saskatchewan should have an effect on what we're doing, keeping the economy going.
No, but they certainly should have input into it if they're affected. To veto it, that's pretty strong. I would think the people you really need to listen to are the environmental groups involved, Greenpeace, and there's many of them around. Mm-hmm. And maybe just people off the street. But I'm not sure about the municipal governments because I don't know what their agenda might be.
I would be more interested to see what the perspective is from First Nations communities. I know that there's a number of issues where you're talking about pipelines, where it impinges on certain First Nations rights. So before even going to the municipal level, I would be interested to see what the communities that are being directly affected by said pipelines would be saying.
No.
Why?
Well, just the nature of it. It's a national initiative for the benefit of the entire country. And the last thing we need is every municipality having an opinion and just derailing any progress.
I don't think so. I think so because that gets back to, I mean, we do have laws about expropriation. You can't hold up something that's for the good of the city just because you don't feel like selling. And I don't think a city should be able to hold up a project that may be of national in origin. I think that they should be listened to. I'm not suggesting they shouldn't, but I think there has to be a compromise and a balance.
We're one country and we should learn to cooperate. And I personally am a supporter of pipelines, and there are 70,000 people without jobs in Alberta at the moment. We need the pipeline.
I don't know about veto, but definitely they should be a part of the conversation, even before the decision's made.
That's we're fighting that ourselves right now where I live. They're trying to. The municipalities are trying to. It's not being very successful. That's a little disheartening. I would like to think that the municipalities would have being able to that they could bring to the table strong concerns to the federal, and that they would listen to them, and to the pipeline people themselves. So in that respect, I'd like to see the municipalities have a strong, confident say in the matters.
Yes, they should definitely be able to do that, because I wouldn't want a pipeline going through Winnipeg. And I'm pretty sure small towns and all other municipalities don't want pipelines going through there. Same with reserves, they don't want pipelines going through there.
Wasn't there just a big protest in North Dakota?
There's still a big protest in Standing Rock right now, and they're vetoing it because they're trying to get the pipeline to go into the water, be in the water, and it has so many ramifications for the environment that they have the right to be standing up against it.
Yeah, I think that municipalities should have a say in what's happening in terms of pipelines. There's a lot of people that live in cities that are connected to the land and connected to the water outside of their cities. I don't see things as I see things as very interconnected. So there's a lot of people here that go to Lake Winnipeg. There's a lot of people here that have families that live up north and are going to be impacted, if there's oil spills and stuff like that. And ultimately, we're all affected by these projects. And I think that municipalities should have a say.
Some things are national, some things are local. A pipeline bypassing your city or going through your city is a national thing. It is not a provincial thing. It is not something to do with your municipality. They are the safest mode of transport of anything there is to transport on planet Earth. And anyone who doesn't understand that isn't getting the right message.
Former Prime Minister Kim Campbell was born in which province? Nova Scotia, Manitoba, or British Columbia?
British Columbia.
Nova Scotia. Manitoba. Wrong again.
Nova Scotia.
I'm going to say British Columbia.
I'll go with Manitoba.
The answer? British Columbia.
Oh, hey, I'm winning.
You did well today.
Yeah.
Very good.
Thank you.
Kim Campbell, Canada's 19th Prime Minister, was born on March 10th, 1947 in Port Alberni, British Columbia. That's all for this episode of Outburst. Like what you see? Well, you can watch more full episodes on our website at www.cpac.ca, on our CPAC TV To Go app, and also our YouTube channel. You can also join the conversation on social media via Twitter and Instagram at CPAC_TV. I'm Glenn McGuinness, and on behalf of all my colleagues at the Cable Public Affairs channel, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.